Morning, it's October 2nd. This to my liberal friends. I'm going to hold my breath till you give me what I want. Now, how many times have we heard a toddler say something like this? But now we have adults, led by Matt Gaetz, the Republican from Florida, who's regressed to the terrible twos and acts like a toddler. Way back in April, when the debt limit crisis was the one of the day, Speaker Kevin McCarthy forced President Joe Biden to come to the negotiating table. And that was after Biden said he wasn't going to negotiate. But they did negotiate and arrived at a deal that would extend the debt limit for 2 years. In that deal, Biden had to give up multiple things, and most analysts made it clear that McCarthy had gotten the better of Biden. So fast forward to today, and we're faced with another crisis with a deadline. It seems the only way things get done is to put these politicians with their back to the wall, and then one of them finally blinks. This time it was either fund the government or allow it to be shut down. The adults in the room all realized that in the end they would have to compromise, and that's what they did on Saturday. They punted the issue down the road for 6 weeks, and now they have to find a solution to fund the government for the rest of the fiscal year. What Congress passed on Saturday is called a continuing resolution, and it funds the government at the same levels as the previous year. The deal that McCarthy and Biden reached would still be in place if they can come to an agreement within those 6 weeks. That deal limited the funding to no more than 1% in the new fiscal year, and also called for Congress to pass the individual approach bills, and hopefully we don't have these short-term CRs that culminated with a massive 4,000-page omnibus bill that nobody knows what's in it. But the little children in the room, or should I say the Brats, told the Speaker they would not vote for anything he brought forward unless he gave them everything they wanted. They demanded across-the-board 8% cuts in spending. They said no money to fund the war in Ukraine. They wanted to build a southern border wall. McCarthy had worked until the day before shutdown deadline to pass a 45-day funding bill that included a spending reduction, money for border security, and a commission on the growing federal debt. It wouldn't have passed the Senate, but it would at least given the House leverage in conference. The GOP's rejectionists defeated everything. Because Speaker McCarthy has such a slim majority, he has to negotiate with these brats and brought forward several iterations of the funding bill only to have them reject them and refuse to give the Speaker the necessary votes to pass them. When the midnight hour fast approaching, the Speaker was forced to turn to the opposition party to get the necessary votes to keep the government funded. The Democrats finally quit voting no and gave him those votes. And it should be noted that a majority of Republicans voted in favor of the bill, along with the majority of the Democrats. Once the bill was passed, Matt Gaetz went on TV and announced he would offer a motion to vacate Speaker McCarthy. What he intends to do is split the Republican caucus into two parts. His little band of a dozen or more against the overwhelming majority of Republicans. Without the vote of these bunch of brats, McCarthy cannot retain the Speaker's gavel unless the Democrats decide to vote for him and thwart Gaetz. But in reality, Matt Gaetz showed his true colors, and those are someone that's more interested in himself and his own ego than the Republican Party. He showed how little he understands the reality as he postures for the far right. If Republicans sent a bill over to the Senate that violated the agreement reached in April, then it would be rejected by the Democratic majority. The media would blame Republicans for reneging on their agreement. Matt Gaetz, Matt Rosendale, Andy Biggs, Ralph Norman, Dan Bishop, and their pals have given no evidence that they understand the reality of divided government. It requires the House GOP unity to have any leverage against the Democratic Senate and President. And even then, there has to be some compromises. In the last elections, the Republicans underperformed and the predicted red wave did not appear. I believe a lot of that had to do with Donald Trump and his antics, but the current division within the caucus is only allowing the Democrats to sit back and laugh. It gives them more credibility when they say Republicans cannot govern. This is the point that Gaetz and his cohorts don't seem to understand. Matt Gaetz and his buddies think they can topple the Speaker, but who would want the job knowing that these idiots can try to blackmail them as well? And that's exactly what they're doing, blackmailing him. If Republicans in their districts had any sense, they would find someone to primary each and every one of them and send them packing home. The best course of action would be for the entire caucus to debate issues within the caucus, but once a decision is made by the majority, it behooves the rest of them to get behind it. It only hurts the party to see it broken into factions. The Democrats have their factions, but when it comes to actually voting, they get behind their leader. By passing bills in an orderly manner, it allows Republicans to go out and campaign to expand the majority in the next Congress. It shows the voters that once again, if they're given control of the spending, and by that I mean having both the House and Senate, they can actually pass bills that would dramatically decrease spending. This has been To My Liberal Friends. I appreciate your listening. If you enjoy the podcast, recommend it to your friends.